All right. So after my last video about snaffle bits, single jointed snaffle bits versus French or three piece or double jointed, there's a million words for them, snaffle bits. Then I got some questions about Pat Puckett's missing link bit. And there was some this and that. And one of the comments I made is that, at first I thought it was kind of a joke, but then I actually used one a couple times and pretty handy for the time and place that it's needed. It's not a bit that I would use a lot or that I would really want to start colts with or anything like that, but it's a bit that works for what it's supposed to work for. And then one of the comments was, I said something about you're always going to have trouble suppling the neck with that bit. And one of the comments was, why? Well, so it's easier to explain visually than try to type it all out. So with our snaffle bit, all of training for at least the first year, and then really into a lot of the rest of it, the secret's all in the neck. It's all in getting that neck supple, getting them to follow their head and be supple in the neck and not stiff in the neck. That's what we're doing. Basically all we're doing for the first year. So with a snaffle bit, you're only supposed to ever pull on one rein at a time. I've talked about this before. I pull on two reins sometimes, so does everybody else. Everybody does it. But the way it's designed mechanically to work, it only works correctly if you pull on one rein at a time. So when I'm trying to supple the neck, if I pull on this rein, I've got all of this surface area here working on the cheek. And so this was what the other video was about, this whole idea of this collapsing action and poking them in the mouth and nutcracker effect on the jaw. It doesn't work that way. Watch the other video and I'll explain why. But when I pull on this rein, I've got all of this surface area on their cheek to give them that signal that I want to go right. And the same with on the left. And so this left one moves and articulates and gives the horse the signal that I want. This one doesn't do anything. To some extent in the mouth, I'm sure there's some movement, but it stays stationary. And so that's why snaffle bits work so good at what they're good at. There was, before I get into the Pat Puckett part, there was also something somebody said, I don't use snaffle bits, but when I do, they're straight, no joint in them. How come those aren't popular anymore? How come you don't hardly see those? Okay, you saw a lot of those when people were still using a lot of draft horses for farming and stuff, and driving horses. You see them a lot, mostly with draft horses, not specifically driving horses, but draft horses. And the reason is, the reason they don't work very good for training a saddle horse is because, and this will go into the Pat thing too, is because if I pull on one rein, if this a solid bar, the whole thing turns in their mouth. And so I just get a single part of it that's putting pressure on their cheeks instead of all of that. It's not here. It's in my shoeing box. It's in my shoeing box because I use it to tie a horse's foot to its tail when I'm shoeing a bad one. That's the only use I have for one. So instead of having all this surface area to give signal on the cheek, I'll only have one point of pressure, and this deal rotates. And then this could, by rotating like that, could inhibit other parts of the mouth and give them some weird signals. It's not something I thought about all that much with a straight bar snaffle. But I could think, I don't need to think about it. That's why it doesn't work. The whole point of a straight bar in a draft horse bit is because draft horses don't pull, they push. Think about it a little bit. If you can't visualize it, just get on Google and watch draft horses pulling. They're pushing against the collar. They're not pulling their load. They're pushing against the collar. An old teamster taught me that. Well, the way to get them to push harder is to pull more on the reins, and then they will lean on that bit and they'll push against that bit too, and that's how you get them to push harder. So a straight bit, the whole point of it is that it doesn't do this, is that you can pull and then they'll lean on it. They'll lean on it and they'll push harder against their collar, consequently pulling their load better. The only other place I've ever seen a snaffle bit really a straight bar really have much use. And I take that back. There's one other place too. But with race horses, it's the same deal. You pull on those reins and they'll lean on that bit and they'll run harder. You don't see it very common in the race world, but in dressage, if you're in a double bridle, you've got a bradoon and a bit. A bradoon is a really narrow, most of them are narrower than my pinky finger, straight, solid mouth snaffle. And it's the same deal with that bradoon. You can pull on that, they'll lean on it a little bit, and then they can drive their hind end up farther into that. Basically, you're creating a wall with that bradoon, and they can drive their hind end up, raise their back higher, you get more collection. So that's why in the Western world, and in like 99% of training, just a straight bar isn't really all that practical. So that's why you don't see them very much. So now on to Pat's bit. This is not Pat's missing link bit, but this is, I don't have one of Pat's bits. I might actually get one, because that one I used a couple of times. I think it'd be the cat's pajamas for blown up barrel horses and stuff like that. But this is close enough in proximity of the mouthpiece that Pat's bit has, and then his has got a roller, and then there's no leverage on his, so it would be rings here. The reason you won't ever get them as supple in the neck with that is what I was just talking about with the straight bars. If I pull on one rein, it's going to rotate this bit around, and so I'm just going to have a smaller point of contact in the cheek, in the horse's cheek. I'm going to have a smaller point of contact, and so that horse won't get as supple turning and bending its neck. And the same the other way, obviously. And then in Pat's bit, because there is more going on here, with that rotation, it is going to cause some mixed signal in their mouth about this rolling over their tongue and moving around in there. And so, like I said, it's a good bit, and it's good for what it's good for, which I don't think Pat ever said anything about starting colts with it or training horses. I'm pretty sure his whole deal is he has it for horses that are messed up, that he's trying to retrain and trying to get them into a bridle. And so he can introduce them to that mouthpiece without any leverage. And like I said, it works good for what it works for. But for starting a colt and using one hand or the other and suppling that neck, it's just not going to do as good of a job. So, and Pat hates snaffles, but I think he would agree with me in this particular situation, that you're just not going to get the neck as supple. So there you go. 92.
I want to thank the subscribers of our Patreon channel. The patrons, that's Patron where I'm from, give us the opportunity to bring these videos to you all. Without them, this channel wouldn't be possible. Join us over on Patreon for more in-depth lessons and step-by-step instruction on everything from gear to theory, riding everything from colts to bridle horses, the circus pole, and husbandry. We'd love to see you all over there.